Hi everyone, this is Danielle with Two Sisters Wreath and More. I wanted to show you guys this super fun wreath I made today using the One Roll Wonder method. This uses one roll of mesh that is 10 inches wide and 10 yards long, so that's 30 feet. And I'm using a 14-inch wreath base from the Dollar Tree. I like to secure my first section with a zip tie, and I am making 10-inch poofs going from section to section. So there are 12 zip ties, 12 pipe cleaners on this wreath form. There's 6 on the outside and 6 on the middle. And like I said, I'm measuring 10 inches on the outside. When I get to my last section, I just snip it off with my scissors and make sure it's really nice and tight and secure with my pipe cleaner. And then I go ahead and do the same thing in the middle. However, in the middle, I am going to measure it at about 8 inches and go from, again, section to section, making your 8-inch poofs. This mesh is really fun. This is some Easter mesh that I got from Craft Outlet. It's got lots of fun colors in it. Okay, so when we are done with our poofs in the middle, I'm going to snip it off, and then we're going to move on to our next part of our wreath, and that is cutting the spirals. So you will have the perfect amount left over to make your spirals. So these spirals I'm going to cut between 8 and 9 inches, and you're going to end up needing a total of 24 of them. I like to do 12 at a time just because I don't have a ton of space to work with. If you want, you can cut all 24 and put them in a box or a basket and off to the side if that's going to help you, but this is just how I like to do it. So you're going to roll each spiral up and put 2 crossed together and then secure it into one pipe cleaner. As you can see, I am untwisting my pipe cleaner first and then adding in my 2 spirals and making sure it's nice and secure and that my spirals they don't have to be super tight, but you don't want them really loose either. Cutting the last 12 spirals. Sometimes when I get towards the end of my roll, if I can tell I'm going to have extra, I will cut them at 9 or 9.5 inches just to use up my mesh. And as you can see, I had a tiny bit left over, and sometimes I save that off to the side, or I simply just throw it away. All right, so our last half of our spirals are going into our wreath. On the sections where I have cut the mesh at the end of my poofs, I do not untie those twist ties. I like to keep that nice and secure, so I just lay my spirals right on top of those 2 pipe cleaners and just twist them. And then when we add our ribbons, we're going to untwist again and add them on top of our spirals. So there you have it. There's what the base looks like. It's really pretty and full. Here's the sign I'm using. This sign is from Craft Outlet. I believe it's a 14 or 15-inch long sign. It just says Happy Easter, and it's really bright and cheerful. So I added hot glue to that, and I'm going to set it off to the side to let it dry. And then now I'm going to make a bow using the Easy Bow Maker. And for this bow, I'm using 3 ribbons. I'm going to use 2 2-inch ribbons and 1 1.5-inch ribbon and a pipe cleaner to secure the bow together. So I'm going to start with a solid yellow and dovetail the ends. And on this Easy Bow Maker, it's got numbers on it measuring out your inches, which is very helpful when you're making a bow. So this bow has 3 loops with 2 tails. So this one, you're going to start on the left-hand side. The left-hand side is going to have 2 loops, and then the right-hand side is going to have 1 loop and your 2 tails. So your second layer, you're going to do the opposite. The left-hand side will have the 2 tails and the 1 loop, And the right hand side will have the 2 loops. And then for our last section, we're going to do the 1.5 inch, and this will be just like the bottom where the 2 loops will be on the left hand side. You can do as many ribbons as you want on this kind of bow. I've done just 2, 3, or 4. It is just a really fun bow to make. It's one of my favorites and I use it a lot. You can also make it bigger loops, bigger tails, however you'd like to do it. Okay, so I'm going to attach this onto one of the middle sections, the middle pipe cleaners. So that way it's a little bit closer to my sign and you can see it better when it's hanging on the door. Twist that bow on there and secure it onto the back, and then I'm just fluffing it out to make sure you can see it really well. And then now we're going to move on to our ribbons. I'm going to be using 6 different ribbons, so we're going to have 3 different sets. Sometimes it's easier to think about it as A, B, and C as you're attaching it onto your wreath. So I generally like to do 3 2-inch ribbons and 3 1.5 inches. However, I very often do 6 2-inch ribbons and pair them together. So don't feel like you have to do it this way. You can mix and match. It doesn't really matter how you're doing it, but just find what is going to work perfectly for your wreath and what makes you happy. So I'm dovetailing all of these ribbons. You're going to need 4 pieces of ribbon for each set. Besides one of them, you're only going to need 3. And if you notice as I get going, I get a little distracted and I end up cutting 4 for each set, which is totally fine, not a big deal. So like I said, make sure you're dovetailing. As you can see, I'm using this rotary blade just with a straight edge on it. However, if you want to, you can use scissors to cut your ribbon. You don't need to use a rotary blade. You can also do different things with your ends. You don't have to dovetail them either. Feel free to cut them on a diagonal or even use pinking shears to make little zigzags on the ends of your ribbon. That's a lot of fun too. So I've got a few solids. The yellow is actually a yellow ribbon with Swiss dots on it. The mesh on here is rather colorful and busy, so I wanted to have some ribbons that were more solid or plain, just so my wreath wasn't too busy. But I did want to also incorporate some fun Easter ribbons as well. So, okay, so now you're going to take your first set and you're going to overlap your ribbons. I like to offset them just slightly so that you can see both ribbons. And then once you dovetail them, even though you measured at 14 inches, they're now sitting at closer to 13 or 13.5 inches. And so I like to just measure it on my board, make sure I'm getting as close to the center as possible. So, about 6.5 inches. And then you're going to fold them into a V. And I like to kind of round mine a little bit so they're a little more poofy. And then you're going to place them into your wreath. So as you place them into your wreath, you're going to think about this as a pattern. So you're going to go A, B, C, and you're going to start, I like to start from the outside. So outside is A, then middle, B, outside C, inside A, and so on and so forth until you have completed your entire wreath. You don't have to add a bow into something. If you don't want a bow, you're just obviously going to put a set of ribbons in that place. You could also add more than one bow if you'd like. Oftentimes I add a bow on the top and on the bottom. That's the fun thing that I like about this wreath base. It's very versatile. There's all sorts of fun different ways that you can add your ribbons onto this. And there's also times that I love the mesh so much that I just simply make a bow and leave it so you can see the beautiful mesh. So Once you're all done adding in your ribbon, I twist it and I'm going to cover up my cut pipe cleaners so that you can't see them. And now I'm just giving some extra measure of security onto my pipe cleaners with stapling the pipe cleaners on using 1/4 inch staple so that way it doesn't go all the way through your board. And then I'm going to attach it to my sign. And I like to attach these rectangle signs onto the cross wires on the wreath form. So that way I know that it's not going to budge. It's not going to move. It's nice and secure on there. So this is kind of a longer sign. So you just need to make sure that's sitting there